There's a meme on Facebook going around mostly in the sort of classical musicians groups, and it says the difference between classical music and pop music using a very basic and very ham-fisted meme. Now, I felt compelled to talk about this because it's polarising opinion on Facebook, creating many arguments, which is a shame because this is music we're talking about. This is this universal language. As a member of both teams, I'm a classically trained violinist and pianist. I played in orchestra at school and then at university, where the standard was really high and I was pushed and pushed and pushed, and I loved it. It was brilliant. I play mostly rock and pop stuff now, but I do lots of writing and I use my classical training to help me with that. Now, this meme is... You got the classical musician who is stood next to a few leaves on the ground, but below ground is a massive carrot growing. The rock and pop musician who's taller, don't know where that's come from, they're sort of stood there with their legs crossed and their arms folded, just leaning against loads and loads of leaves, and below ground is a tiny little sliver of a baby carrot. Okay, what's this representing? Well, to me, the carrot represents the growth of the musician, the hours and hours and hours and hours that an orchestral musician or classical musician will have spent learning their instrument, honing their craft, struggling against the odds to get a really good sound, to be able to read music, to be able to sight read, to be able to do lots and lots of things. And then the pop musician is the lots of leaves, which to me represents the sort of bravado, the ego, maybe even the success of the pop musician. And the carrot, the tiny little sliver, representing the sort of four chords that a guitarist might know, and they just, all their songs have got the same four chords and they sing their the lyrics over the top and make lots of money out of it. Well, you know, that in itself is not very common anyway. Now, you will find lots of orchestral musicians who do recording sessions, and they play arrangements of pop songs. Yeah, that's fine. And part of the reason they do that, well, obviously there's an enjoyment in playing new music, and it is new music. But also it's getting some gigs, getting some other things besides orchestral work, or a bit of teaching, or whatever else it is they do. Now, if you are a sort of rank and file orchestral musician, you will be paid, you might be on a salary if you're a member of orchestra, you might be freelance, but regardless, if you are rehearsing, you might rehearse all day with an orchestra and it might be £80, £100, £120, whatever it is. It's seemingly not much dosh. Now, if you sing in a pub on guitar and you play your three chords, you can earn the same money playing an hour and a half's gig and probably get free drinks, and it's all very informal and very sort of light. However, if you are that pub guitarist, you've got to turn heads at the bar. You've got to make somebody with a drink go like that. Whereas if you're an orchestral musician, you'll be playing to an audience who has come actually to listen to you specifically. So there is kind of that extra luxury in being a musician in an orchestra. You are playing to people who want to come and hear you. Rock and pop, if you're in a pub, it's a bit of a slog unless you're good. Even then people can ignore you because the telly's on with football on it. There are many, many aspects to that meme that are a problem. Now, you will find that lots of rock and pop music is written by people in, publishing houses who have classical training, classical background, because their harmony, the sort of level of knowledge that they have in order to back up the artists that they're writing for. Of course, there are artists that write their own material, yeah, fine. But you will find that there are artists on stage who, you might find a female singer who's not wearing very much, for example. And, that's how it is. It's become sort of lots of dance routines. Yes, they might be good singers, and I'm not taking anything away from them at all. Good dancers and a good dancer and a good singer is worth masses in musical terms. They might not have any theoretical knowledge. They might not be able to read music. It doesn't matter. It's their craft. and it's how it works. The fact that it involves not wearing much, that might be a red herring, and I don't wish to generalize. Part of trying to diffuse a generalization like this meme is not to introduce new ones. So I'm going to try not to. Now, when you look at rock and pop, yes, over the years it's been born out of the blues, 3 chords, chords 1, 4 and 5. But the classical music era, which runs roughly from 1750 to 1830-ish, is built on the notion of tonic and dominant. That's chords 1 and chord 5. It's just done with a few more flavourings, perhaps. But so's the blues. If you listen to B.B. King, if you listen to his performances, you're just captivated by the presence and the performance and the singing and the emotion that goes into all of his tunes, actually. But you might find a classical sort of musician, a rank and file orchestral musician, who's literally just reading the dots and the dynamics, and the emotion might not be there. It's again, that's a generalization, trying to avoid a generalization. But the very fact that this meme exists really, for me, is just sour grapes. It's saying, well, why are rock and pop musicians so successful when they have no musical theory? Why do you see a painting in an art gallery that's 3 blocks of colour that might be a priceless work of art, whereas somebody with real technique might be really struggling to get a commission? Why is it that happens? Well, it occurs across all the arts. You get people who are successful who have less ability than others who are not successful. It is the way things are. It really is. Now, you could have, in the classical era, let's go back to the 1750 to 1830, give or take, you have Mozart and Beethoven. For those 2 composers, they've stood the test of time. Really stood the test of time. Beethoven, almost 200 years after his death, people still put it on the turntable, put a CD on of whatever Beethoven symphony they want to listen to, and it's good music, really good music. You'll have Mozart, the same sort of thing. People are still paying lots of money to go and watch an orchestra or go and see an opera or whatever it is. But for those 2 composers, there will be thousands of other of their contemporaries who never made it to the light, whose music never saw the light of day. Not because it wasn't any good, but because perhaps they weren't in the right place at the right time to get a commission. Nobody's taking the abilities of Mozart or Beethoven away by saying that. Now, there are rock and pop musicians who have lots and lots of theoretical knowledge, whose music is too complicated for the masses. But there we are, you see. Mozart made a name for himself and made his music, and his music is what it is, partly through being popular. It's pop music has been around since the dawn of time. Now, if you look at some of Dvorak's works, they're based on folk tunes, folk music, which is pop music. It's people, playing something and passed down from down the generations. And Dvorak, he's expert at taking a folk tune and making it into an orchestral work. But it's the same thing. We're all doing the same things. And generalizations like pop music being somehow unsophisticated, or pop music could include folk music, and that classical music all it's doing is reinforcing the public's viewed elitism of classical music. You're not going to access, if you are coming home from work and there's a pub one side of the road and there's a concert hall on the other side, most people are going to go for a drink in a pub, hear a band or whatever, and go home. They're not going to get themselves doled up and spend 25 quid going and seeing an orchestra. It's a shame. It's a shame. That's a lot of money to spend. But people don't access this stuff. I've often thought what it would be like, how successful it might be to get a string quartet to play in a pub. Why not? Why couldn't you do that? Why couldn't you have a theme night? Why couldn't you give somebody some music that they would never otherwise access. Because if you're sat there with a pint of bitter and you can just dip in and out and you just think, I'm really enjoying this. And somebody might be playing some Purcell or Stravinsky or whatever, Mendelssohn. And, you know, that's string quartet playing in that pub they would be playing some string arrangements of Coldplay or Madonna or whatever. Because you have to give people tunes that they know, but you also have to give them something extra that says, I really enjoyed that. What was that?